ideas and a different way of doing it. So let's look at the passage now. So the first question is, to whom is the message addressed? I've made my notes here. So the message is addressed to, in verse 1, my Bible says, woe to the crown of pride, yeah?
Yes.
So it's Isaiah 28. Woe to the crown of pride, to the drunkards of who? Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is a fading flower, which are on the head of the fat valleys of those who overcome with wine. Pastor Gift started by saying it is the church. It's not the church. We must be specific with what the passage says here. You can make your application later on as much as you want, but the passage is being specific. So the first thing is that the message is addressed to who?
Ephraim.
To the drunkards of Ephraim. And the drunkards of Ephraim is another name for the northern kingdom of Israel.
Yes.
So Ephraim, another name for the northern kingdom of Israel. So it was addressed, the passage was addressed to Ephraim, the northern kingdom of Israel, whose priests were drunken with what?
Wine.
With wine. What is the message in verse 2 to 6? Thereabout, we see the message. What's the message? Let's read it. Behold, the Lord hath a mighty and strong one. The Lord has a mighty and strong one. Who, like a tempest of hail and a destroying storm, like a flood of mighty waters overflowing, shall cast down to the earth with the hand. The crown of pride and the drunkards of Ephraim shall be trampled under feet. This is speaking of the destruction of who?
Ephraim.
And they were going to be trodden down by the mighty one. Who is the mighty one here?
God.
No. The Assyrians.
The Assyrians.
It was a judgment determined on them by the Assyrians. The Assyrians. When the Assyrians attacked, the northern kingdom of Ephraim would be destroyed. So this is referring to mighty one is being referred to as the Assyrians. The Assyrians were going to come upon them and they were going to be trodden down. Very, very important. If you are reading this and you are doing a real exegesis in the best way, you would need to have Bible dictionaries. What else? Bible commentaries. And in the Bible commentaries, you would need to look at the bibliographies and to see what other people say. You also need Bible atlases to be able to understand. How many people have Bible commentaries at home? Wow, very few. How many people have Bible dictionaries? Very few. You are using Bible every day. You must have commentaries and dictionaries. So when the Assyrians attack, the Ephraimites would be trodden under their feet. But if you look at verse 5 and 6, in that day shall the Lord of hosts be a crown of glory, and for a diadem of beauty unto the residue of the people. In other words, would everybody be destroyed? No. There would be a what? There would be a residue. Not everybody. Those who appear faithful to the Lord would be considered as a diadem of beauty, and they would remain. All right. Now let's look at what do you notice here in verse 7 and 8? Let's look at 7 and 8. But they have also heard through what?
Wine.
And through strong drink, and they are out of the way. The priests and the prophets have heard through strong drink. They are swallowed up of wine, and they are out of the way through strong drink. They err in vision, and they stumble in judgment. For all the tables are full of vomit and filthiness, so that there is no clean place. All right? So, Isaiah offers a transition. Now, the transition that he offers is that he's addressing who now? Not Ephraim in general, but he's addressing who? The priest and the priests and the prophets. He's being specific now. He did not address the Ephraimites personally per se. He's now addressing the priests and the prophets. They are so drunk. Okay? So he's addressing the priests and the prophets of the southern kingdom of Judah. They were consumed with wine, just like those of the north. So he was now comparing the priests and prophets of the southern part of Judah with the northern part of Ephraim. Okay? Are you with me, everybody?
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
All right. Now, what we need to understand here also is that in verse 9 and verse 10, who is speaking? Verse 9 and 10. Verse 9 and 10. For, read that. For whom will he what? Whom shall he what?
Teach knowledge.
Whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand what?
Doctrine.
Those who are weaned from the milk are drawn from the breast. Who is speaking here in verse 9 and 10? Isaiah? No.
It's referencing what Ephraimites said.
Who is speaking here?
Ephraimites.
It is the priest and the prophets who are now speaking. You need to notice something. We talked yesterday about when we're doing biblical interpretation, we also need to take into consideration the nouns and the what? The nouns and the what? That the pronouns. Notice the transition here. And the transition here is that verse 9 says, when Isaiah was speaking first, we should realize that in verse 1 to 8, Isaiah was using the third person plural. Them. Now we see a transition because the drunkards and the priests was now speaking. And they were using the third person singular. Can you see that in verse 9 and 10? Yes. Verse 9 and 10 says, whom shall he? And the he there is referring to who? God. No, not God. Isaiah. The he is referring to Isaiah. Because Isaiah brought the message to them to say, you are going to be broken with a mighty one, the Assyrians, because of your drunkenness. The place is full of the filthiness, and you're vomiting an abomination. There is nowhere that is clean. Now we see a transition. If you look at it carefully, the priests and the prophets were now speaking third person singular. Whom shall he teach knowledge? Who do you think you are telling us what to do? Can you see that? Yeah. You're not seeing it? Whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Precept upon
Precept.
precept upon what?
Precept.
Line upon what?
Line.
Here a little,
There.
there a little. So what these drunkards were saying is that, who does he think he is? It's like the pastor coming up here to correct you about something, and you shout, who does he think he is? And excuse my language, we hear it all the time. To hell with it. Have you ever heard that?
Yes.
That's exactly what was happening in this passage. The drunkards and the priests were saying, whom shall he teach knowledge? And who is he going to make to understanding? Treating us like we are little children, telling us precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. So the drunkards were speaking. Can you see that? Whom shall he teach knowledge? And who will he now teach doctrine? As though we are babies. As though you're teaching us like little children in school to learn our ABC. We don't want to hear from him. We don't want to hear anything from him. We're not children to be tutored again by you, Isaiah. So we notice a change in pronoun. When Isaiah spoke from verse 1 to 8, he uses the third person plural. They and them. Did you see that?
Yes.
Now, the priests and the prophets are speaking. There's a transition. They are now using the third person singular. Whom shall he teach knowledge? That's what the passages say. And then we see, so that's the comparison between verse 7 and 8 as it relates to verse 9 and 10. Verse 7 and 8 speaks to third person, plural. Verse 9 and 10, third person, singular, because they are addressing Isaiah. And then as we continue now, in verse 11 to 13, so we see who is replying. So the priest and the prophets are ridiculing Isaiah in verse 9 and 10. They are mocking him. What does verse 11 to 13 says? After they finish mocking Isaiah, verse 11 to 13, what does it say?
For with stammering lips and another tongue he speaks to his people.
Can you read it, please? Just read loudly.
To whom he said, this
Verse 11.
for with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to these people. To whom he said, this is the rest, where would you may cause the weary to rest? And this is the refreshing, yet they will not hear. The thing. But the word of the Lord was unto them precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little, that they might go and fall backward and be broken as snare and taken.
Right. Who's speaking here?
Isaiah.
Who is speaking here? Is it the drunkards?
The drunkards.
Is it the drunkards speaking here?
Yes.
No.
Isaiah.
This is now God's message to them. God's message to the scoffers is this. Okay. Since you're making a mockery of Isaiah and the words that I have bring to you, I do as precept upon precept and line upon line. Our words in the Hebrew as kabla, sab, salah, Allah. In other words, you want to hear babbling? You're making a mockery at my message through Isaiah? Then I will speak to you in another language and in another tongue when the Assyrians come up on you. And then you will begin to understand. Whereas you are telling Isaiah, don't teach us anything, as though we are children, where you're bringing lines to us. We don't want any here doctrine from you telling us about precept upon precept as though we are your babies that is weaned, and you're teaching us the rudiments of language again. God is now saying to the priest and to the prophet, you wait. Wait until the Assyrians come upon you, and you will see something. You will understand what precept upon precept is, and line upon line, and here a little, and there a little. And I hope when they come, you can take it. Do you understand the concept? Yes. In an everyday life, you talk to your children, and they ridicule you. You say to them, you wait. You wait. You're making, and those of you who are school teachers, you would say, wait a minute. You will soon see. You will see, you soon understand. You're making a mockery. But I hope we say in Jamaica, it's not the first laugh that counts. It's the last one to laugh. That's what the passage is about. And then when you continue verse 14 to going down, you will see the rest of God's message to the prophet, through the prophet Isaiah. So precept upon precept, line upon line, is not a formula to interpret the Bible. Precept upon precept, line upon line, were actually the priests who were drunk and were mocking Isaiah by saying, we don't want to hear anything from you. We don't want to teach us anything. We're not your children. We're not children who are in nursery schools for you to be teaching us line by line. Don't teach us anything. And God says, okay, I hope when the Assyrians come and they will speak to you. Amen?
Amen.
Verse 13b. Look at verse 13 and you will see something further. Let me read verse 13.
But the word of the Lord was unto them precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line. Here a little and there a little, that they might go and fall backward, and be broken and snared and taken.
All right. What do you notice here in the verse?